shown some good strategies here. They've perfected some of the good strategies, even ones that we saw developed by teams like Paint for Femme in here. So I think that this is a really, really good spot for Perplexed to show that they are still that same team that took down Wunderbar in the last time they played.
That's right. Well, the map's ready to go. Let's get into it. This is game number 1 between Perplexed and Complexity Limit. Dratnos, Horseman, and Tettles, let's take it away.
Is that a mage?
That is a mage. We got fired up on... I actually can't see his full name, but I bet it's like fired up cannon or something.
Hopefully. All right, so now you have Divine here, grouping up all the mobs as you do see Zamaka, Shine, and Swag running off to the side, getting in that camouflage, getting everything that they need to as well, making sure that their Feign Death thing are melding off of all of those mecha jockeys to be able to get the Peacekeepers to not proxy, aggro, anything. And you do see Perplexed here with all the Peacekeepers running towards them. This is going to be a fairly efficient pull for them. On the side of Complexity Limit, they're looking like they're doing something very similar. His name is Fired Up Casty, not Cannon.
Yeah, well, that's good detective work. Glad we found that out.
You see him currently doing tank damage, but do not fear. Once you do see that combustion begin to be popped, he will ramp up very rapidly.
Yeah, with access to this Tournament Realm gear that we have right now, mages have so much access to that Masterful Corruption. So Fired Up here, I assume running a full set of it. We can actually go take a look, though. And that is...
Let me do some detective work. Okay, so he's playing that World Bane Resonance Major. So he's playing what is known as the Minute Mage. So basically he has Kindling, World Bane, Resonance Major, and Vision Perfection Miner to be able...
Tanks have died on both sides. Both teams have a tank on the floor, and they're going to have to try and get reses out. It's really difficult to do with 30 Peacekeepers. Complexity Limit do get Max back up. Perplexed, the opposite has happened, though. A Shine has fallen, and they still don't have Divine back up. Complexity Limit trying to recover here, but Fired Up is under attack. Fired Up has drawn the ire of all these enemies without Max there to tank for him, is now sitting inside an Ice Cube.
Okay, Fired Up does press his meld, so he's able to drop threat here. Eric and Atrocity both have ways to be able to drop their threat as well, so they were trying to drop everything. As long as Max can get threat off of Twisted, this should be fine. It looks like Complexity Limit's able to recover, whereas on the side of Perplexed, they reset coin-operated Crowd Pummeler. They're just trying to get these Peacekeepers down, because if they lose the count for them, then that would be just catastrophic. But I do not know how they recover from this.
Yeah, I mean, this is just two different problems, one of which was solved and one of which was not solved, right? The Complexity Limit side of things, they were able to really recover. On the side of Perplexed, they are going to get that Battle Res out. They're going to return Divine.
Is the Coin Pummeler pulled again? Oh, no, man.
I imagine they're obligated to reset the boss here because they don't have a Shine Up, nor do they have a Res for him. I imagine that the fastest thing for them to do would still be to just reset the boss again. And I think it was just pulled because the mobs were being kited through where he spawned.
Divine just got hit by the
Stunny Stun. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Okay, the boss has been reset. The Peacekeepers are now starting to all perish. Perplexed did not lose as much as we thought they were going to, considering how catastrophic that mistake was. On the side of Complexity Limit, things are looking okay for them, though.
Yeah, Complexity Limit doing great here. They've secured all the count. It cost them that battle res, but because they were able to have somebody go in and get that battle res and have it like that was just extreme good presence of mind and quick reactions to be able to get Max up before. Once your tank goes down, you're on a very, very short clock before things become a disaster that you can't recover from. And somehow Complexity Limit was able to fit a battle res into that timer, whereas Perplexed was not really able to do so.
So while you don't have battle res classes on your comp, so Warlocks, Druids, or Death Knights, the ability to be able to res your tank once they do go down in an MDI scenario is very scary. Because you have to be, 5 yards? And you have to be within 5 yards, and it's like a 6-second cast or something like that.
You have to run into melee where all these mobs that now hate you are standing, ready to kill you. And, luckily the hunters don't have too much threat themselves. Their pets have a lot of the threat. And they also have the ability to turtle res. I'm not sure if we saw that come out. It was a little bit hard to see what exactly was going on there, but that can be a good way to get that done without there being too much risk. But it needs to be done quickly before more people start to die, because that timer is usually very short if there's a big pull going on. Complexity Limit, another big pull here, handled beautifully by them. No on-death affixes here, so they're really not limited in terms of how big they can pull, especially with Tyrannical active instead of Fortified. And you can see they've just pulled the entire corridor here all at once, taking it all down.
Fired Up actually didn't use his combustion for this pull, even though he had it up the whole entire time. And I think this is one of the reasons that people, whenever they talk about mages, talk about why they are not seen in the MDI as frequently, because both Eric and Atrocity used multiple uses of their aspect of the wild cooldown, where Fired Up has to maintain that combustion throughout the whole entire pull. So it's just consistency of damage versus burst damage. But there's obviously a reason. You have to have some balance between consistent damage and burst damage, unless you play a hunter, which you have both all the time. But
all right, we now should get to see Fired Up actually with that combustion popped, and we'll see what he can do combusting into Azarok with all the trash and the boss ads around him. Fighting Shot will be able to keep those boss ads under the boss for a while, allow them to catch on fire, and you can see Fired Up every single second there when his Ignite is ticking.
Ooh, that's a fat Ignite.
Just going right up on those meters with all of this Masterful Corruption. That is doing huge amounts of damage to everything. And that, yeah, look at that. That is the Mage doing the Mage thing there. Huge amounts of single target damage that also kills everything around the target. Great showing there from the best that the class can do. But like you mentioned, the trade-off is that it doesn't get to do this every single pull. It needs to have the cooldown up. But he is playing the Minute Mage variant, which means he'll have it up roughly every minute instead of roughly every 2 minutes.
Yep. Like I was saying before the tanks died, Kindling and Vision of Perfection Minor allows you to get your cooldown up, and it lines up roughly with World Vein Resonance if you are casting Fireball throughout the duration.
Yeah, you can see Fired Up just about back to a second combustion. The way that they generally play this is they still have a bigger combustion, with a Font of Power and a Hyper Thread Wrist Wraps activation every 2 minutes, and then they get a mini combustion in every minute instead. But I'm actually not sure what Trinket's Fire is playing. I'm not sure if he's got time to channel Fonts of Power in this setting.
So he's playing Badge and Vita.
Okay, yeah. So he's not even playing. He's not playing Ajar's Font of Power, which means that his damage is even less like the traditional Mage damage profile, and a little bit more kind of on demand and less setup required than that traditional Mage package. So I think that's a big part of how they were able to bring this Mage into their comp here, is by adapting it into a bit more of a general use spec rather than a scalpel.
You just see Perplexed here. They do snap Voidweaver Malthier into that wall. They're pulling Malthier towards Azarok. They're probably going to kill Malthier nearby, and then you're going to see the tank most likely go out by himself and engage Azarok to be able to get all of the fixates on top of him. Actually, no, all of the teammates from Perplexed.
Yeah, they're going out first so that they can grab the trash and pull it into Azarok, instead of just going straight into Azarok here. Complexity Limit, meanwhile, have not fought any awakened enemies yet, which means that there's a very good chance that they are planning to... Actually, you know what? Given the fact they have a Mage, they might not be planning to kite. They might just be planning to 4 Obelisk with boss here in this dungeon. I believe it is a possibility with their composition, and Complexity Limit is the team that has done the most 4 Obelisks with bosses in dungeons where other teams have refused to do it. For instance, Mechagon Workshop is a dungeon where in the MDI Cups, Complexity Limit was the only team to successfully 4 Obelisks with the last boss, as far as I know.
Okay, so look at that. On the side of Complexity Limit, you see the misdirection coming out onto Max. Eric is tagging these Technician and this War Machine to be able to pull the trash right on top of the boss.
This is
normally pretty scary, but this is big value for Complexity Limit, because Fired Up is able to spell steal off this overclock buff off the War Machine and then pump all of the damage into his combustion. He is getting insane value just because of the ability to be able to gain that overclock buff over other compositions such as the Triple Hunter.
Yeah, look at that damage here. And you see those numbers and you're thinking, oh, it's just AoE. There were only 3 targets here. This damage is not AoE damage. It's not AoE bad. He's just actually doing... Oh, goodness, Atrocity disengages right through a bomb, barely survives.
So, for others who don't really know, a meta strategy for live realms even now is to now start pulling a bunch of mobs into VMZ because of that overclock buff and just the ability to be able to spell steal on the Mage. It just increases the power of a zone that is normally not pulled because the Sky Scorchers are scary. But whenever you're able to get what even is the overclock buffs? Is it 50%?
It's
whenever you're able to get a
boatload of haste, right?
Yeah. Whenever you're able to get like a significant amount of haste, it translates to damage really well. And you see Fired Up here doing 200k DPS here. Now another War Machine and more Technicians are being able to.
Unfortunately, they interrupted the overcharge there. That may have been a stun or something that was unplanned.
Now Fired Up, passively aggressively in voice being like, thanks guys, I really appreciated you kicking that or stunning that. I'm not at all upset. There's no way for me to be upset. I don't know why you'd ever think that I'm mad about this. I just have my combustion rolling.
That's a very mage thing to do.
All right, so now you actually see Rix of Flux Flame dropping sub 10%. Complexity Limit's going to be able to finish this off momentarily. Perplexed has actually pulled something in the a bunch of masterminds and assistants over here on the side after.
Yeah, the research and development wing. This is not something where we see a lot of trash
wing.
generally pulled, but some teams have decided to use this, and this is actually, I think, is something that Perplexed and Paint for Femme both did when this strategy was first pioneered that they're using. And the reason that they're doing this instead of what Complexity Limit's doing is they can get more trash from the rest of the dungeon, whereas Complexity Limit needs to get a lot of trash from the VMZ because I think they're planning to either kite the obelisk, or to maybe kite the obelisk here.
So what is certain, though, with Perplexed being at 85% enemy forces count, is that they are not going to be kiting Awakened mobs, just because of how
killed
much...
an Awakened mob as well. That also brings that probability down pretty close to zero. Complexity Limit, you're right, it's 50-50. They could kite, or they could try and 4 obelisk.
The advantage of having a mage on your team is that their potency at being able to kill Awakened mobs is actually really high. So having one mage double hunter, you're able to taunt the Urgroth Spirit Breaker casts. The limiting factor is probably going to be like the kicks from Malthier, but even then,
you can feign them.
It's hard to say.
You can feign them. You can reflect them. You know, there's a lot of players on whom
Ice
you
block.
don't actually have to interrupt in this composition. I think this might be the ideal composition to 4 obelisk with boss. Triple Hunter's good for it too, and we've seen Triple Hunter actually do it in Motherlode before, but the Mage just makes it so that you're in that dangerous phase for so much less time because of how effective Combust is at ending that phase quickly.
Yeah. All right. So now you actually do see here Fired Up getting his combustion back up. Another double War Machine pull on the side of Complexity Limit. There's a lot of Sky Scorchers in this pull, and that's fairly dangerous, but Max doing a good job of being able to soak those lines from those Sky Scorchers. You do see the combustion going off from Fired Up. All this trash starting to burn down fairly quickly as he starts to catch up with these Hunters in their damage, and now all of this trash is going to perish. It looks like they're going to reach 100% trash count, so the likelihood of them kiting Awakened
more
mobs...
likely, yeah.
Exactly. I definitely agree. Now you have Perplexed here, getting Rix of Flux Flame to 30%. Complexity Limit is about to start pulling Mogul Razdunk right now, though.
Yeah, Complexity Limit entirely in their court here. If they can do this properly, whatever their strategy is, and it looks like it will be a kite here. You can see by the way that Twisted is pre-positioning that he's going to be attempting to get threat on these 2 obelisks, and the rest of the team getting far away there. They will be misdirecting the left 2 obelisks over towards Twisted. Twisted getting threat on the right ones, uses Life Cocoon to give himself a little bit of a buffer and generate some healing threat as it gets eaten through. And now yeeting on out of there, running away as the rest of the team now has to do this fight without taking too much damage from stuff like Volcanic, because of course they no longer have a healer with them. Fired Up, playing that Mage. Normally mages have huge amounts of self-healing in their combustion, and so they can just kind of turret and stand still. But with the World Vein Major instead of the Lucid Major, they don't actually have access to that. So Fired Up is still going to have to be careful even when he's combusting in order to avoid mechanics while Twisted is kiting here.
Ooh, okay. So now Atrocity and Eric both dropped pretty low, where Twisted is running away. He's going to be looking to set his Transcendence here momentarily to be able to kite back across the water. That oil or water near Rix's room is fairly dangerous. You see the Transcendence go down right there. And so now he's getting all of the mobs grouped up a little bit more tight-knit, and he's going to be making a circle to be able to get Urgroth allowed to kind of catch back up with the rest of the party. You see him off to the side near the Transcendence right here. Now Twisted pops a movement speed increase in the form... I don't know, what is the movement speed increase? Tiger's Lust.
Yeah.
He pops a Tiger's Lust to be able to run away, and now he is out of danger momentarily. Ooh, looks like a cast is going off on him, but it's fine.
No, he's able to range that, and a great performance there from Twisted. Very technical work there, because you need to make sure that you're keeping Urgroth close enough to you that he doesn't snap to you or the rest of your party. And so the problem with these mobs is that they spread out a little bit because Urgroth spends so much time casting Dark Fury that he'll get far behind all the others that don't have casts like that. And that means that you have this rough situation of Urgroth sometimes just being far enough away that he will then snap. So great job here by doing these circles of keeping Urgroth close to where the others are and looping back towards where he is.
Yep. So now these double Sky Scorchers have been down here momentarily. Mogul Razdunk is going to do his final crash down ability. You see Fired Up entering that ice block to make sure he doesn't take any more damage. And now Complexity Limit, it's going to be just a burn on Mogul Razdunk himself. Perplexed have pulled Razdunk. You do see them finishing up a couple of obelisks. So basically they're just hoping that Complexity Limit has a mistake. Mogul Razdunk is very scary for teams that are kiting obelisks because just momentarily lapse. Oh my goodness, this is very scary. Okay, Complexity Limit's going to be fine.
Fired Up here actually is also playing, I believe, above 60 corruption. I think he's got Mastery 3 on all of his gear that I can see. I think that with the amount of cloak resistance that's on the tournament realm puts him solidly above 70 corruption. And it's just going to be... he's got one Masterful 2 in there to actually keep him below 80, but other than that, it should
clearly,
be above 60, yeah.
Clearly he's not above 80 because we would see the debuff on screen. Like, it would be on his player frame, right?
Yeah.
But yes, he definitely has a large amount of corruption. Mage, one of the best classes being able to deal with those adverse effects of corruption. Mogul Razdunk starting to drop pretty low here for Complexity Limit. Perplexed is close, but I think, unfortunately for them, those mistakes that happened at the very beginning of the instance are just going to come back.
Perplexed's done a great job here of closing this gap, and they do more damage here as they have that healer, and they don't have to all be defensive about everything. But it's just not going to be enough. They're in this intermission, and Complexity Limit is finished with the fight. Great job kiting there. Atrocity does get sniped by a rogue missile, but that is not going to be enough. Complexity Limit takes the first game.
That's right. Complexity Limit taking the victory in Motherlode right there. And you guys were mentioning like right at the end, and I know Zyro was probably looking at it very closely. That is a ton of corruption for the Mage, Zyro. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. We've seen in the past that a lot of these classes are really hesitant to run just over 40 corruption because just getting really bad RNG thing from Beyond procs can one-shot your character if you don't have your cloak available. Running over 60, if that thing hits you, it also spawns an eye and does the corruption slow, which when you're at 76% corruption is like, it's like an 80% slow or something. So if you get hit by that at a bad time, you're just gonna die. Now, Mage is one of the best classes in the game at dealing with it. You have Frost Nova to stop the ad. You can blink away from your eye if it does hit you. You can also just Ice Block if you get, really unlucky. And it looks like it wasn't that much of an issue for him, but, we could, in that situation where Twisted's kiting around and you have a Mage up there with 76 corruption, if he just gets a couple bad things from Beyond spawns during a Gatling gun, there's no way you're living through that.
Yeah, and again, I love the differences that we're seeing for so many of these teams to look at what is required for them to, one, make a difference, and two, how are they going to start differing from a lot of these other teams? And Dranos, the Mage pull seemed to work out incredibly well in their favor.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
They won the map. Winning the map is definitely the goal.
Sure.
And so, that in that sense, it worked out well for them. On the other hand, things went horrifically badly for Perplexed on that first pull. Yeah. And I believe that they closed the gap over the rest of the dungeon. I think that if you looked at that aside, Perplexed, I think, had a faster time on everything else that was going on in the dungeon. So I don't think that it's necessarily an outcome that we can say, the Mage won this map. In fact, I think if you held everything else in equal, it looks like Perplexed's combination of comp and strategy looked probably a little bit faster than what Complexity Limit was up to.
While even playing triple obelisk with the final boss, they played Malthier solo, and they played triple obby with the final boss. So, I think I definitely agree with what Dranos is saying there.
Well, there's definitely a trade-off, right? If you're kiting the last boss, you have to run the rebooting bit bands instead of the haste bit band, right? So you have to make sure you're healing each other rather than getting a little bit of extra damage out. So yeah, they're going to do a little less damage in general. Yeah, and you also
Fired Up as well has to play a logic loop, and logic loops are not good items for mages. Logic loops, 440 crit on those things. That is a curse statistic for the mage spec. So definitely makes the itemization a little bit worse on their side, but does save a lot of time when it works out, and Twisted did a great job of the kite. So I think that part of the strategy probably still a time saver for them. I'm just not sure about the whole rest of it.
Sure. Well, let's talk about that the routing as well, and those mistakes as well, Zyro, as we check out the replay.
When we talk about the really good teams, especially your Wunderbars and Perplexed like we see in this series, the really great teams find a way to fix their issues and minimize their mistakes. So yes, even though Max does end up going down here to these mechanized peacekeepers, they're able to find a way to res him, and that really saves their run. Perplexed wasn't able to. They also had a DPS go down, and that kind of just crushed the run for them. You can see on these middle two bosses the power of the Fire Mage being able to cleave that combust onto these first four Earth Ragers, pumping up to 900k damage. Just the Ignite's probably taking for 350k there, pretty much soloing the Earth Ragers on his own. And then, of course, I love the double War Machine pull onto Rix of Flux Flame, being able to spell steal those overcharge casts, getting 100% increased haste. Once again, just carrying the damage on this boss. I think the Mage is just a particularly good pick for Motherlode in general, and I think if there was a little bit more precision with all of their pulls, they could probably have one of the faster Motherlode types in the tournament.
Interesting. All right. And now let's start looking ahead as well, because Motherlode was starting us off, but now we also have Atal'Dazar, which is usually just one of those lightning quick maps coming up onto this one. Titles haven't seen it yet in the tournament so far, but it's also been something that neither team has particularly been insane at when we saw it at the 19 level. Now we got a lot of time for practice and they can adjust their strategies here. But what are you thinking as we go into 21?
I wish to have these affixes for live keys. Skittish, Quaking, Fortified. That is a very swift dungeon that we will see. I believe the fastest that we saw in a 19 was a 955 Atal'Dazar, posed by Wunderbar. It will be interesting to see if we see something that is going to be under 10 minutes. Even though it is a 21, I suspect that we will see something that's under 10 minutes. I like the cat.
I like the cat as well. It's like Teddles' cat in the background.
What are the dinosaurs at the bottom?
This win rate stat as well, I think it's a little bit... You have to take this with a grain of salt, right? Because Perplexed had to play against Wunderbar, right? And Complexity Limit did not have... They had more matches against lower-seeded teams, I think, in Atal than Perplexed did.
So while I will say that win rate and average completion time is not always the best statistic to be able to tell the difference between the two, average deaths is a fairly common statistic. The 4.67 coming out for Perplexed versus the 0.5 for Complexity Limit. That's just like a huge differential in terms of like what the teams are probably going for into the dungeon. I do you expect to see 4 obelisks kited on Yasma? I think that's a reasonable thing to expect, right?
Oh yeah.
I think so. Yeah. At this point, with how much time that these guys have all had to practice and all the resources at their disposal to start studying up on those other teams, I think that they would be remiss if they weren't kiting throughout this, because it's just made it so much easier. And even despite having some of the weird timings or something like that with like the fires, teams have done a great job of figuring out how they can make it through those, how they can go back into the priestess room, kite all the way through without too much of a hitch. So I think we're going to have to see it for both of these teams as Atal'Dazar's getting ready between Complexity Limit and Perplexed.
Yes. So momentarily, all right. So we do have that right here. I think it's likely to see both teams immediately running towards the left side here on the opener. Oh, actually, no. Both. I lied to you. It is
we have the Angry Toast snap available for both teams that we may see done here. So the way that this would work is a misdirection could be used to attack Razan, and yeah, that's going to snap Matt. Oh no! Complexity Limit is having a very bad thing happen where they're all going to die, and they're going to use a battle res, and that person is then immediately going to die as well, and that is 6 deaths on the board for Complexity Limit.
Hey, left side of the screen here, we got Perplexed. Did pull off the Angry Toe Snap where they ran it straight down mid, pulled the triple dino pack into Razan, like Dratnus was stating, use the Hunter Misdirection to be able to snap the tank towards the boss, because that's how the snapping ends up working out for Razan himself, and it was just a great showing by Perplexed. They had a binding shot to make sure that everything was going to stay grouped. The SARS got blown up very quickly.
Yeah, on the side of Complexity Limit, however, things have taken a turn for the worse. They have now secured 2% by pulling a sword pull by itself. However, it cost them Atrocity's life. And they're now coming back down here to pull Razan again. The silver lining is that their Bloodlust was not used the first time, but the reverse silver lining is that they are still so far behind.
Do not know if I would describe anything here as a silver lining, unfortunately. Complexity Limit very, very far behind now, just due to how poorly that first pull did go. Fortunately enough for them, though, there's a lot of room for mistakes in this dungeon. And especially with how aggressive Perplexed is probably going to be looking to pull it, if you're Complexity Limit, you just kind of have to hope that the other team is going to make a mistake. Where Perplexed, if they just play their game plan and do it clean and consistent like they've been doing in practice, then they should be able to pull this off.
Yeah, Complexity Limit now needs to... They both need to play well from here, and they need something to go wrong for Perplexed in order to make their way back into this game. But those could both happen. That is definitely a possibility in Perplexed. You know, that average death statistic that we saw from them of about 5, you know, that indicates an amount of sloppiness in this dungeon that could work to Complexity Limit's advantage.
So here's a substantial pull from Perplexed. So they're pulling, I believe it's double Confessor, double Augur, and then you have a Colossus into this pull. And you do see they are focusing down this Colossus as best they can to make sure it doesn't get bolstered up. Oh, a Juggernaut charge ends up going off, but it ends up hitting the Magus, or one of the minions for the Death Knights. It does end up hitting that instead, so everything's going to be fine for Perplexed. They down that pull very cleanly, and now are making their way towards the Priestess Alunza area. Complexity Limit still on Razan.
We might be on pace here for a faster time than Wunderbar's at all. The way that Perplexed is doing this, there are only 2 minutes and 45 seconds in here, and they already have more than half of their trash count, and they're working on now the second boss. This could be a incredible pace from Perplexed if all goes well.
It's pretty scary with the Juggernaut there, but you do see Swag doing a good job of making sure that he is the only person who is at range of that Juggernaut to allow the cast to go on him. Alternatively, you can use stuns such as Asphyxiate or Shockwave or whatever on that cast from the Juggernaut whenever it is going off to be able to stop its charge. You do see it go off again. Again, Swag doesn't end up going down during the transfusion, so you make sure that he is disengaging away from it, dodging it, doing a great job there of making sure that he's able to stay alive in what is a very scary moment.
Yeah, you do have to be extremely careful of those Juggernauts, especially sometimes you can stun them as they're charging, and then when they get out of the stun, they'll just still do their AOE thing, and that means you have to be really careful with when you stun them if that is your plan. A better plan, I think, is what Perplexed did there of having just Swag bait all of them, and that way he could be ready to dodge.
Complexity Limit here on the other side, the right side of your screen, is actually doing double Colossus pull. Atrocity ends up going down, but I think this is probably going to be the end of the pull. Once Atrocity ends up going down, Eric ends up dying, Fired Up, and Twisted Max. It's going to be full team wipe for Complexity Limit.
That would have been a pull, though, on the side of Complexity Limit. If that had worked out for them, that would have made a substantial amount of the gap back up. You have to wonder if this was part of their strategy all along, or if this is them saying, all right, we got to do that one thing that we couldn't quite get to be consistent in practice because we're so far behind. And because we've lost all the count from our first pull of the dungeon that we didn't successfully execute.
Yep, Perplexed here, doing a pretty big snap. It looks like Swag's pet's not on the ledge there. Okay, now his pet has now arrived at the ledge. If you're a hunter in this dungeon, you actually want to use a flying animal companion because they're able to make their way onto that lip a little bit easier. You actually do see Swag electing to run that pterodactyl animal companion to be able to snap his pet onto that lip just a little bit easier.
Meanwhile, Complexity Limit are just having the saddest time right now. They are fighting 3 enemies all by themselves. They've done 3 crash pulls in this dungeon, and they're going to come out of all 3 of them with a combined 13% trash count. 11% is going to be that number. This is brutal to watch. From Complexity Limit. The good news is, no matter how bad things go for them in this dungeon, they won that first game. They will get the opportunity to bounce back in that third match, but I don't see how they can take this game back unless something just unbelievably bad happens multiple times to Perplexed.
11% count versus 100% count.
Yes,
so this
I'm
means
not
that
a math
Perplexed
scientist, but I do think I'd prefer to be on the 100% side of things here.
Yeah, around these parts we call those math magicians.
Okay.
Yes. Anyways, so you do have Perplexed here, downing these totems. Since they are at 100% count, they're absolutely kiting the Awakened Obelisk. So I think
a little
that's
careful
like
here. Some of these totems are getting very low, while another was still at 50% health, but they're doing a good job of swapping over to that. Of course, once you bring one of these totems to 0, you have to get the other 2 down very quickly, or else the first one will regenerate to full health, and then you'll get a beautiful effect of going around the room, going to the one that just healed, and multiple can heal after that. It can be very bad.
Complexity Limit's just kind of standing here, waiting,
yeah,
trying to figure out
what to
pull next.
Trying to figure out what to do, and
they're gearing up for the double Colossus pull again. You actually did see Atrocity there, misdirecting Max. In all honesty, if they're able to pull this off, this is a sick pull.
Especially even
with
without those
trash
mobs that they've cleared out individually here, this is still a very challenging pull. Dazar and Colossus do not mess around. They have that cast that they'll channel on somebody, which basically murders them. However, and Complexity Limit is able to deal with it, looks like. Those Colossi are getting big, but they are going to be dealt with and taken care of.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a cool pull. Unfortunately enough, it comes a little bit too little too late, I will say. Perplexed here, getting Volcall, sub 30%. He should be going down here momentarily. They're not all going to have Shadow Meld available yet, are they? Okay, well, I guess maybe they will. Divines is coming up here in just a moment.
Yeah, that Shadow Meld is a pretty powerful effect.
Well, they need to
get
back
out of this room.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they need to, otherwise they would have to have somebody pulled to the side. I mean, yeah, you do only need the one Shadow Meld to get out here, but it's faster if everybody has it. Because they can just all go instead of having to spend time coordinating it, yeah.
Divine's Meld, everybody's Meld is back up. So now they are running their way through, foregoing killing any of these troll side mobs. I think this is actually a pretty good strategy. I wonder if anybody's actually going to pull the undead mobs on top of Razan later on.
Yeah, we saw
Maybe
that.
not,
That was
since you just get all count.
Strategy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the team that first showed us that Razan misdirection snap, and they pulled slightly different trash onto Razan than most teams have been doing.
The mid pack is probably where all the teams.
I imagine that the top teams have all tried all kinds of different pulls onto Razan and concluded that the mid stuff is the play.
All right, so Zamak here.
Yeah, you can see all of those awakened enemies running over towards Zamak on the side of Perplexed. They will be doing this snap strategy. And yeah, Zamak transcends out of the room and will be bringing these awakened enemies with him.
So this cast that he takes is actually intentional, and the reason for it to be intentional is because he's trying to gain enough healing threat on all these mobs. So he's making sure that he isn't topped going into the pull. He's making sure that he's getting taking some damage, because you have to be able to actually heal back up through your health bar to be able to gain healing threat. It looks like a mob hit Yasma. One of the Soul Rend ads hit Yasma. This is
not good.
Scary from Perplexed.
Look how low on health the Shine and Wolf Disco are.
Oh my god.
There's going to be another Soul Rend here in a second. They're almost to the second Soul Rend here of the fight. There it is, starting to cast. A Shine is at 22% health.
Healing threat. Oh my god, the DK's got healing threat. That's okay. Well, that's going to be a wipe.
That is going to be a wipe for Perplexed. Now, the good news for Perplexed is that complexity limit is still, has 3 or 4 expansions behind here. They're still working on Wrath of the Lich King, while Perplexed here in Battle for Azeroth. So I think Perplexed has time to have another pull go wrong, maybe 2. But this is complexity limit is starting to get the opportunity to come back here. If another pull goes wrong for Perplexed, they might be back into this, and they're doing a massive pull actually on the side of complexity limit to try and make this up here. I wonder at what point Perplexed.
Wait, there's a mid pack. So that was part of the first pull of the instance that they did, and now it is currently in this pack. So they were trying very hard to catch back up.
And that's good. You see their count is advancing here. They're getting close to 100% count. They just need to do Volcall, and then they will be caught up here and able to pull Yasma themselves. So they are still maybe 3 or 4 minutes behind where Perplexed are, but Perplexed has this very difficult job to execute here, this pull, and things could easily go wrong for them just in the same way. And if that happens again, they're going to be in big trouble. I think that their best path to winning this match for sure would have been to actually just go and clear out an obelisk or 2, and then just fight Yasma with 1 or 2 obelisks. I don't think they would have any chance of losing if they'd been keeping tabs on just how far behind complexity limit was. However, very hard to dedicate your time in match to thinking about those things instead of thinking about just executing your route as well as possible.
So something that's actually interesting that I noticed the first time it happened is that Swag had his pets on the Awakened mobs and was actually hitting them with his pets, and I don't know if that actually messed up Zamak's kite or not. Because the pets could have ripped threat off of Zamak, causing him to have more problems being able to get everything grouped. Whereas this time, Swag had his pets in that feign death play dead mode while he's misdirecting all the threat to Zamak. So it's hard to say what exactly happened there, but that is something that I did notice was done differently.
I think the reason that the healing threat was such an issue was because that ad connected with Yasma, and that led to everybody having to heal themselves way more.
That is also a main problem. The Soul Rend ad hitting the boss was the biggest issue for sure.
And you can see this time they're doing a better job of not letting that happen. A Shine, though, going very low on health there. I think that may have been a connection with a thing from beyond. It does survive, though, that big hit.
So something that is interesting, because there are no intrusive affixes in terms of on death or whatever, on death affixes, Zamak is able to get a path cleared out to where he is able to run towards the bottom area and run laps around the Razan room. So in the past, we've seen teams have to run up towards the Priestess Alunza area to be able to get good amounts of space, but without that,
Perplexed is having awakened enemies snap back again. Once again, they have awakened enemies.
No.
24% health on Yasma. If they can finish off Yasma without a healer, they will be okay. But casts are going through from Voidweaver Mouth here on the members of their team. Yasma will soon be casting Soul Rend. Yasma at 19% now. Wolf Disco still. Ads are connecting with Yasma.
That's gonna be a wipe.
It's going to be a full team wipe for Perplexed. However, they still have time here. Complexity Limit are making their way to Volcall, and they'll be pulling Volcall soon, but Perplexed are... So they have another opportunity at this. If they can kill this boss on the next pull, they will still win the match. If they wipe again, Complexity Limit will have the opportunity here.
How many expansions ahead would you describe this as for Perplexed still? One expansion ahead?
It definitely looks like they're doing their best to get into the Shadowlands.
I see. All right, so Perplexed gearing up for what is yet again another attempt at Yasma. I think that this is a good point to point out that doing these strategies is actually incredibly daunting and incredibly challenging. And while these teams make it look seamless, and sometimes it looks so seamless to a point where people believe it can be boring, this is exactly why it is so hard. And everything that we watch on screen is actually just like a feat of beauty, because it requires so much practice and so much timing, and how precise all the movements are for these speed runs inside of the Mythic Dungeons. It just looks great whenever it's executed perfectly.
Yeah,
and Perplexed here, making sure that they do 4 Awakened mobs with Yasma is so hard.
The roughest part of this as well is once you've wiped, you're like, okay, we got to do that again, except without Bloodlust or Army of the Dead.
Bloodlust.
Yeah, and you're just like, it's much, much worse to do it the second time. It's still doable, but Swag is down on the side of Perplexed already. They do have 2 battle reses, so they're going to be able to get him up. That actually is not going to cost them very much at all here, except for that battle res, which will probably not end up mattering. They're probably not going to need to use both their battle reses later in this fight either. Divine, though, taking quite a lot of damage here on pull. Able to survive so far, and Zamak going 3rd time's the charm. Kiting is going to work this time for sure.
Do you want to explain why the mobs are snapping back to the group, Gratnos?
Yes, I believe it to be a healer threat issue.
Yes.
Yes. And there it has happened once again. Samrak, Beckoner of Chaos has disappeared. And I believe the culprit is the Skittish Affix. I think that the Skittish Affix is causing... Actually, you know what? That shouldn't matter, because
look at the Shine's healing, though.
Threat. Skittish should actually be helpful for this, because it means the tank shouldn't be as likely to snap everything back. But yeah, everybody in the Blast Arena is having to like Death Strike, and they're having Exil and Health Stone and Health Potion to keep themselves alive. And Zamak has just not generated that much threat on these enemies. So those mobs are just snapping right back once those other people are the top on the threat table. And yeah, Complexity Limit are now in the position to win here. They have the Bloodlust. They are going to be pulling Yasma before Perplexed does. If they can do what Perplexed doesn't, then they will be winning here in this game. It is remarkable.
Oh. Yeah, that's pretty rough. So now you see Complexity Limit. They do have Bloodlust available. They have both of their Army of the Deads available. So in terms of like a pure damage race, they should out DPS Perplexed here. Now, like we've seen a couple of times, kiting the Awakened mobs on a 21 is definitely the challenge. And that's ultimately going to be the scariest part, is making sure that all of those Awakened mobs get out seamlessly, and then also making sure that your Spirit Men's, making sure that your Death Strikes don't end up ripping healing threat off of your healer.
Yeah, Spirit Men shouldn't be too much of a problem, because I think that threat is actually assigned to the pet. Although
is it reappropriated to the pet? Okay, interesting.
But the other effects, are I think the problem. And it's unlike in the Motherlode, there's not really like that toxic puddle that you can step in to take a little bit of damage. There's basically no damage instance that Twisted wants to take here from these things, right? That would be a huge problem. And I don't actually see Urgroth. Okay, Urgroth is still there. Twisted needs to not get too far ahead of Urgroth, because Urgroth will potentially snap.
Is casting Dark Fury.
And he's going to have to just run here and just YOLO it, I think. Pops the dampen and just runs through the fire. But
on the plus side, he does have a lot of healing to be able to do to himself, since he did pop that dampen and run through the fire. So
yeah, genius
him
play.
Topping himself.
Genius play on the side there of Complexity Limits. Twisted. And you can see Yasma's actually almost dead on their side, because they had all those cooldowns on pull, whereas Perplexed did not have access to them. Although I do still see Bloodlust available.
So where's Urgroth?
Did they actually forget to pop their Bloodlust, or
no, there's Urgroth.
Oh no, they lusted, but it was after Twisted was out of range.
Yeah, so we couldn't see the observers couldn't see the stated debuff.
Yeah,
so it's like it makes a lot of sense. Perplexed here is they finally look like they have this kiting down perfectly, whereas Complexity Limit, they're making their way. Did you pull an auger? Was that a wildfire I saw going? Or was that a wildfire I saw going?
Yeah, there's Dazar Augur and Dazar Juggernaut joining the party here for Twisted, but it doesn't really matter, right? If you're kiting already anyways, it doesn't really matter.
As long as there's a mob snap to him. Yeah,
especially, something like a wildfire could be a survivable enough point of damage that you can generate some healing threat. But yeah, Yasma is 6%, 5%. Complexity Limit somehow are going to win this game.
2-0? Oh my god. Oh my goodness. This is like one of the most wild games we had ever seen. We're like, oh, Atal'Dazar is going to be a great quick dungeon. There's going to be all kinds of big pulls that happen, but